Hi, everyone. Good morning, and thank you so much for joining us today for this morning session. Um, uh, I'm really honored today to be interviewing Honorable Justice Mrs. Pratibha Singh, sitting judge of the Delhi High Court. Now, we are in a different kind of a world, and for those of you who didn't chat GPT her profile, or didn't deep dive into who she was as a person, I want to tell you that she is a prolific thinker in the field of intellectual property rights. And even before she was a judge, she has just so many laurels to her, feathers to her cap. And she studied at Cambridge with a scholarship. She then went ahead and instituted a scholarship there for kids like you. Yeah, you just consider me as an oldie. And just bear with me when I say that. And, so there are a lot of things that ChatGPT will tell you about, ma'am.
I haven't done it. I must try.
And this is what it says about you. It says about, okay, if you've read about the IP appellate boards in your textbooks, hopefully, this is one of those people who made it happen. Right? So ChatGPT will tell you that. But there are a lot of things, ma'am, that ChatGPT will never be able to tell. And we are hoping that the theme, the more and more I researched about her, because I'm a research enthusiast, the more I realized that the theme of her life is that strive for excellence and everything else follows. And, this is where I'm going to stop and, start this interview with ma'am. And I hope that this inspires. We are sitting, I prepared this anecdote, so let me just take a minute of your time. For those of you who are perhaps around my age or something like that, there was this time in cricket when Sachin Tendulkar was going to beat the record of Don Bradman. And, and it was a big moment and everyone was very happy about it. And in your age, perhaps, when Virat Kohli came somewhere near breaking the record of Sachin Tendulkar, I'm sorry, I don't know whether he broke it. But, if that happened, and if you are today's Virat Kohli, an aspirant Virat Kohli or an aspirant Sachin Tendulkar, I want to tell you we have Don Bradman / Sachin Tendulkar on stage. So this is what you're up against if you want to come in the annals of history, right? And so we need to understand how to get there and what it takes as a person to get there. And this is where I come to you, ma'am. Ma'am, I want to know, how were you as a child? What were your hobbies and interests? At that time, it was a completely different era. And you decided to pursue a 5-year integrated law degree. What brought it about? What inspired you to study law?
Very good morning to all of you. Firstly, I must thank Oakbridge for bringing me here and for talking to all of you, because so many people have inspired my life, and I don't think if I can inspire even 5% of that much, I would have, done a big deal today. Thank you for having me here. And Kritika, thank you. I hope you didn't spend too much time researching. I don't know what ChatGPT is saying because I've never checked it myself.
I did get a little obsessed, I must confess.
Okay.
But yes.
So I don't know what it says, but I can say you all have to rewind back. Okay, first of all, Kritika makes me sound very old, and I'm not old. I just want to say that. But yes, India was at a time when, as children, we used to stand in lines for getting kerosene and sugar, and that was the time when, as a child in Bangalore, I was completely born and brought up in Bangalore. I'm a Pakka Bangalorean, speaking all the 5 languages in Bangalore: Tamil, Telugu, Kannada, English, Hindi, all of them. Learning to read them, learning to write them. what a cosmopolitan city I grew in. I went to one of the best schools in Bangalore. That was Kumarans. And, but I should start by saying, I lost my mother when I was 7 years old, 6 to 7 years old. She died of an illness. And I was very lucky to have myself and both my brothers brought up by my grandmother and a big joint family of uncle, aunt, and everybody. So my grandmom was this dynamic lady, a South Indian lady who was an entrepreneur. She was a businesswoman. She gave me all the confidence that I always wanted in my life. And I think that a lot of my childhood, the confidence that I had was because of her. Completely believed in me. I mean, we used to go and fetch milk every day. We used to do the rangoli every day in the house. We were brought up in a proper South Indian family. Did all the household work, did all the school work. Coming to hobbies, I used to love to read. I read every book that's possible. I finished all Nancy Drews, Hardy Boys, as we grew up, Mills and Boons, everything. I've read all of them. But I also used to play sports. I was the vice captain of the, we all used to have those groups called the color groups. Yes, yeah. I was green and I was the vice captain of the school, that group. I was debating. I used to do pantomimes in school. But one secret is, I never wanted to be a lawyer. I wanted to be a doctor. I took admission into pre-university. I studied science. I got admission into medicine, but not in Bangalore. I used to dream I would own a nursing home in Bangalore. So, because I couldn't go out of Bangalore for my medicine course, I then stuck, and I was so obsessed with becoming a doctor that I took BA Psychology honors because I thought I'll become a psychiatrist or because I wanted doctor behind my name. But then came an advertisement in the newspaper saying they're going to start 5-year course of law after 12th standard. This was the first batch of the 5-year course in University Law College, Bangalore. So it was never there before. National Law School hadn't started by then. So this was University Law College, first time 5-year course started. And because I was good in debating, my grandmom said, why don't you check this out? And that's how I enrolled into law.
I think that sounds really interesting, ma'am. I think you've done what we generally feel is, and we always talk about it, the path less taken, and you took it, And it's been like your entire journey is like that because I am one of those last batches of people who, when they were told to do legal research, went to a library, pulled out case laws in a book format, and went through the entire library to find a case law. And we were talking of a different time. So you were one of the first people who studied in a 5-year integrated law course, and then you chose intellectual property rights. How did that come about, ma'am?
That was again an accident. So, while doing law, since I was very good at debating, I used to like debating a lot. I participated in moot courts, and we were 3 girls who formed a team, Anu, Anjana, and myself from my law college. We went to Pondicherry for the Jessup moot court selection from India. And I recall we used to travel by train, and as you said, all research was by books. We didn't have the internet at that time. And the law college in Bangalore had one of the best libraries, and it had the best dean ever, Dr. Coutinho. He was my godfather. He was a great leader, a great academician. We lost him about 2 years ago. But an amazing godfather to so many students. He was the dean of the law faculty also at Bangalore University. And yes, Jessup happened. We got selected to go to America, represent India. That was the first flight I ever took at the age of 19. So flying from Chennai to Paris and then to New York. That was the first time I flew. We got a full funding from the Bangalore government, from Karnataka government. At that time, I remember the Chief Minister was Mr. Ramakrishna Hegde. We used to be waiting in Vidhan Sabha to meet him to be able to get funding. None of us could afford it. So, not all the three of us. In fact, I remember very clearly, we had to, courier our memorials to Jessup, and we could not afford 2,500 rupees at that time. A senior helped us from college to do that. One of the teammates went to Dharwad to get the American Journal of International Law. She went by train all the way. So these are the kind of things that we had to do. You can't imagine how different it was. I'm not saying difficult, but it was just different. But we worked hard all along. And I think because of Jessup, one moment I remember in my life was when all the newspapers in Bangalore had all the three of us girls with our trophy in the front page when I was 19 years old. I still have that picture. So, and then because of my mooting, etc., I got into Cambridge. I was waitlisted at Harvard at that time. But I didn't get into Harvard. I got an admission into Cambridge. My family was planning a loan because it's so tough to, afford LLM education even at that stage. But yes, I was very lucky. The Cambridge Commonwealth Trust gave me a complete scholarship. I was an Odas scholar because I was the first rank holder in Bangalore University. And Cambridge happened. And from Cambridge, I applied to a number of law firms. So I did corporate law. At that time, I don't think Cambridge even had an IPR course separately. It didn't have. Now they have an IP and IT specialization, which my daughter did 29 years later. But so they didn't have a course on IP. But yes, I applied to a number of law firms. I used to go to the library, take out the Martindale-Hubbell, taken out Chambers law directory, and applied to all of them by hand, all handwritten applications. But by then, Hindustan Lever offered me a job in Bangalore. And I came back and I didn't get into a law firm. I joined Hindustan Lever as a legal management trainee. And the day I joined, I remember I went back to Dr. Coutinho, my dean, and I asked him, sir, I'm very happy, I got a good job, 5,000 rupees monthly salary. And he said, no. I don't want to see you in an AC office. You have to be in the court, either this side or that side. That I remember his words even now, and when I wrote his obituary, when he passed away, I wrote exactly these words. So just a couple of days later, on the same day or the next day, I got a call from the IP law firm here, whom I joined later. I worked there for 3.5 years. So again, intellectual property was an accident, as I said.
I think, ma'am, when you are when your focus is on doing your best in life and you're just doing whatever is driving you, beautiful accidents happen.
Yeah. Opportunity. I wouldn't call, I'm not sure if it's an accident, I would call it an opportunity. So the best thing is, every opportunity one gets, one needs to just explore it. One doesn't know how destiny is going to span out for you. From being a doctor, then to be a lawyer, then to be an IP lawyer, it was not planned the way all of you think it's planned. It's never planned. It is a lot of destiny, it's a lot of hard work and diligence, but you should just be able to show that that enterprise. I don't know, in Punjabi there's a very nice word for it, ki uddam. Uddam dikhao to ho jata hai. So you need to keep that enterprise going, and that's what matters, I think.
Ma'am, you did things that I think a lot of people in our audience today aspire to do once they are out of this place. And one of those things was also, as you pointed out, going to Philip C. Jessup Moot Court competition. You represented India at an international stage. If you could tell us how the experience was, what were your key learnings when you went there internationally and represented us? Did it shape you in any way as a professional or, your experience there?
Philip C. Jessup, to be honest with you all, it was a scary experience. It was scary because one keeps thinking how one is under-resourced to participate in that kind of a competition. So we were just 3 girls, and we had to do everything by ourselves, everything. Right from research, right from typing, right from arranging funding, right from, everything from top to bottom. And participating in that kind of a moot court without having the coaching that all the teams get, one actually gets a complex when, good morning, Ms. Anand. So, one actually gets a complex when one goes to those competitions, because you see the Australian team, the Japanese team, the British team having 2 speakers, 5 researchers, 2 coaches. They all come with such good paraphernalia even at that time. But we were just 3 girls who went all alone by ourselves and did it. But what it did was, it did expose me to the world of legal education. And we were one of the first few teams which used to moot in India. There was only one more moot at that time, that was the Bar Council of India moot. Apart from that, it was Jessup and Bar Council. And the world of mooting has opened up in India after that. And I recall how, we used to be scared even to, a lot of times Indian students, we wouldn't even understand the accent of the foreigners. Okay? So the judges who were foreigners would speak to us, and it would take us, some time to kind of appreciate and comprehend what they were even asking, even if we had the answer right. So it's a very, very, it is a very realist, it gives you a reality check about what is going on in the world and where we needed to improve as a country in legal education. But I must say, the seeds that were sown in the early 90s, we can see such wonderful youngsters nowadays as lawyers. And one important thing I want to say is, when you participate in moot courts, etc., it's not about winning. It is about being able to build your network, build your confidence, understand how to make a proposition. If a person comes with you with a case, how do you know what to research? That is what it trains you to do. A moot court trains you to make propositions, to do research, to get the case law, to be able to present it properly, which you need to do even in a court of law. Every client will come to you with saying, okay, I have a fight with my brother, this is the property. So what? What do you do? How do you know what to do? Moot court teaches you what to do and how to do it. And I think that's the amazing experience of mooting.
Thank you, ma'am. And I think when your mentor told you that you have to be either this side or that side, you fulfilled his wishes, doubly fulfilled his wishes, because you were this side as well as that side. And that's an amazing manifestation, that you brought to your life. And so, as you told us, you were also the managing partner of a law firm at one point of time. It's very different. The world of law firms is very different. The work culture is very different. And then, you shifted to the other side and you joined the bench. Do you bring any corporate habits from your law firm days to the bench? And was the transition difficult? Was the cultural change difficult?
Oh, absolutely. I've always worked in the law firm where obviously Mr. Anand was my first and only boss. And after that, I was literally like a junior to my husband because he was the only one who had work. When I left, I gave birth to my daughter when I left Mr. Anand. And when you go into the courts, the law firm again happened as a very evolutionary thing. It was not something planned that I would become I would run a law firm or I would become a managing partner. No, it happened very, very organically. It was not planned. But I must say that one beautiful thing that's happened in the legal profession recently is that earlier only litigating lawyers would become judges. Only people who were in court and not those who were in law firms. But law firm lawyers are equally and hardworking and very, very competent as well. So when you run a law firm, what is it that you learn? One learns how to administer people. And you learn how to take care of them. You learn how to be kind to them. You learn how to be conscious of what they want and how you make them inclusive. So you have to treat the peon in the office, the court clerk in the office, in the same kindness with what you would treat your senior most associate or partner or whoever. So that's one thing that law firms teach lawyers, and it's a very good trend that has just happened very recently in the last 5-7 years, I would say, that lawyers from law firms are being elevated as judges, which is very good because lawyers from law firms have worked under extremely, complex circumstances. They know how to do teamwork. Unless you're an individual lawyer, you're litigating, you're going to court, coming back, it's your own office. You have 2-3 lawyers working with you, and it's not like an establishment. But law firms are establishments, and you can bring in a lot of practices from law firms in my own chamber. I believe that, we do have these farewell for staff members. So that is a very typical thing whenever a staff member is retiring, leaving, a law researcher is leaving or retiring. So we do these community things, either at the residence or in the chamber itself. The second thing is, it's a law firm culture that, everybody is accessible to everybody. So that's one thing in my chamber, even as a judge, the lowermost staff or the highermost secretary or the court master, everybody can walk into my chamber whenever they want. There is proper access. There is proper communication. I think law firm culture of working then the first thing I did was use the computer network system to have how orders will be corrected. Create a folder. When the orders go from the steno to the law researcher, there's a separate folder. When it goes from the law researcher to me for checking, then it moves to a separate folder. So these are things that you learn in systems in law firms which really help even in as a judge in my own chambers. A lot of practices we follow like that.
Yes, ma'am. I think that was really insightful, ma'am. And as you pointed out, your job involves a lot of, apart from justice being the main motto, even at law firms or at the bench, but systems that make work move faster, more efficient. And I think that's amazing, ma'am. Now there are these, trends that people say, work-life balance. So what is? You've done so much, ma'am. You've advised the government on laws, how to make them. You ran a law firm, which is an entire lifetime in itself. You are now on the bench. What is your idea of work-life balance, ma'am? And what would you want to advise our audience today about work-life balance in law? Because work-life balance is one thing, and then work-life balance in law is an entirely difficult thing to do. What would you advise them, ma'am?
Kritika, I think you've mentioned 2 things. I'll mention a third thing. Work-life balance in law as a woman. I think that deserves an applause. So, it's a completely different...
Absolutely agree.
Completely different thing. Because I think I may become very unpopular if I say, I've never known what is work-life balance. Work is life. And life is work. So, there is... I think... I do agree that you need a balance of work and life in life. But if your life itself becomes work and your work itself becomes life, then what do you do? So, the first thing is, at least as a woman, I feel the most important thing that you need is a very supporting spouse. So I would now say that even for men. Because one of the major things that you need as a spouse is for a spouse who would understand your profession. And it's not easy for anyone from outside to understand how law and how litigation works. It's completely different. They won't even understand why a senior gave you a conference at 6 in the morning or at 10 at night. I mean, we've had conferences with senior advocates, almost the topmost line of them at 10 at night or at 8 in the morning. Your tone between going and dropping your child to school or to go for a seniors conference. In the evening, you have to get your child's homework done. I have actually had my children in my car doing homework, going to Mr. Salve's office in Vasant Vihar. I mean, this is normal. This is the way you work. There is no other way of working. If you want to do what you have to do, you need, number one, to have a big heart. You need to have, my biggest strength was my joint family. My mother-in-law and my extended family took care of my children when I wasn't there. I used to travel almost 4 times a year. At least 2 trips to the US and 2 other conferences everywhere. So you're always traveling. Every year, imagine every 2 months, 3 months you're traveling. The children need to be taken care of. But then you don't ignore the children as well. So work-life balance is something that at least for 15 years of your profession, when you start off, maybe around 25 till about 40, it's going to be the toughest part of your life. Because you're making your life and you're making your work. Your profession, you have to get clients, you have to make your office, you have to take care of your colleagues, you have to take care of your family, your parents, your children, your spouse. So it is a tough time. And one should feel, yes, we need to enjoy. The best time to enjoy is your vacations. So at home we used to have a joke. When the kids' school closes, the lawyer's school also closes. So आपका भी school बंद हो गया. So summer vacation plan, do your vacations well, spend times on weekends with the family, go on outings, but there is nothing that can substitute the hard work that is required. For years together, one has only slept for 5 to 6 hours a day. That's it. If you get a 5-hour sleep, you should be feeling you're very lucky. And therefore, I believe that number one, work-life balance it's kind of very, if you may say, trendy to say it or fashionable to say it, but at least in law, it is work as life and life is work. Number two, the second thing I would say is that you need to be taking all the help that you can get in life, whether it's a boy, male lawyer or a female lawyer or any lawyer. You should be able to, at the earliest possible moment, hire a driver. That makes your life so much easier because you can be in the car, you can read, you can write, you can make a call, you can even surf, you can do research. That time in the car is, at least in a city like Delhi, is very useful. Don't think of saving up on that. Always hire help when you can and when you can afford it. And that will make your life much, much easier. And diligence, hard work, and the intention to excel is what will take you there. Please don't focus on money. If you focus on money, you're on the wrong track. 100%. Because I remember initial years of my life, I didn't have any IP case at all. And there was this journal called Patent and Trademark Cases. I knew the publisher of that book. And he came and said, "Ma'am, aap head notes bana denge iske liye?" So PTC, I used to make head notes for PTC initially. So we've done all of that, but then one remained busy. The key is to remain busy, remain intellectually involved, write articles, read, do some research. Even the cases that you have, do a lot of research, excel in the way you do those cases. So I think that's how one can start building good work.
That's amazing, ma'am. Ma'am, and throughout the course of this, of Vidhi Utsav, intellectual property rights, we've been discussing it in many different panels about, oh, we want this, we want that, but then people would come up and say, oh, no, don't think that, the IPR in India has not improved, a lot of things have improved, and these are those things. Now, you're one of those people who literally saw the foundations of intellectual property rights being laid in India. And if I were to tell you that, ma'am, there's a genie, and he's going to give you 3 wishes, and you can wish whatever you want to in relation to the intellectual property rights framework in India, what would be your 3 wishes, ma'am?
I would want to see the next big 10 inventions coming out from India. So, there's no substitute for innovation. Because, IPR in India, as I started learning from where I was working, and then it's been like almost 35 years now. And when you look back, one realizes how the quality of litigation has changed, the quality of work has changed. But I'll tell you, this is just the beginning. It still feels like the beginning. I can actually imagine 20 years from now, 30 years from now, we'll be doing some of the biggest IP litigations in the world. I mean, and it's for all of you to get, skilled to be able to handle that. We need to create a whole generation of IP litigators in India. And these could be from IITs or even the science in universities or anywhere. There needs to be a huge generation. We need thousands of lawyers to deal with IP. You'll just see from the number of patents that are being currently filed in India, and you will realize that they are going to be granted over the next 5 years, right? And maybe 10 years from now, they're all going to be litigated. Do we have enough lawyers who can deal with them? There's going to be so much work one can't even imagine, actually. So that will be my first wish. The next 10 best inventions should come from India. Number 2, I would definitely like to see IP divisions in all the high courts in the country. Because the IP division in the Delhi High Court has done extremely well. And there's a big, pool of lawyers, judges who are now IP savvy. And this should happen across the country. And I would be very happy the day that I hear from a foreign litigant that, we now go to 3 other high courts, not just the Delhi High Court. Because as a nation, we can't just depend on one high court to support IP. I think we need to have much, much more, number 2. And number 3, I would like to see India filing the largest number of patents in the world. We're, I think, number 4 or number 5 currently. I'm sure Mr. Anand can confirm that. We need to be the highest filers in the world. There's nothing that is going to stop us except the creation of the right ecosystem. Because in the last 5 years, I've definitely seen a large number of startups, MSMEs, everybody involving in research. We need to invest more in research, especially in the health sector. In health, we need to invest a lot because we need a lot of innovations in health. Our government hospitals could do much better. We need to provide better health care in India. So I think these are the 3 things that I would want. Thank you.
Ma'am, I think what you said was actually very insightful and thought-provoking, especially about inventions in health. Because, say, from 20 years from now, majority of our population is going to be above 40 to 50 years of age. And we're a big population. That percentage of 40 to 50% is a big population and will require a lot of innovation to sustain a proper healthcare system. And, ma'am, we have before us today the future of legal profession. And just on a closing note, what is the message that you want to give to them?
Only one message: be honest and work hard. That's it.
Ma'am, thank you so much for sparing time to talk to us and for giving us a glimpse into what goes into, becoming someone who has always kept excellence at its best and done something, trodden a path that very few people had trodden before. Thank you so much for your time, ma'am.
That was indeed a captivating exchange. We thank Honorable Ms. Justice Pratibha M. Singh for gracing Vidhi Utsav with her presence. I request Team Vidhi Utsav to present a memento to our speaker.